Tonight, we're diving into 7 terrifying encounters that will have you questioning reality. The kind of stories that will make your skin crawl, leaving you up all night, wondering if the dark really hides something more sinister. These Reddit users have experienced things that defy explanation, and some of them might feel a little too close for comfort. Before we begin, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and click the bell to get notified about more spine-chilling stories. Now, let's get started. 1. The Haunting of the Abandoned House. Our first story comes from a Redditor who was exploring an abandoned house with a group of friends. What seemed like a fun afternoon turned into a nightmare that none of them could forget. I think everyone has had that urge to explore an old, forgotten building, right? That thrill of discovering something hidden, left behind by time. But when you wander too deep into the shadows, sometimes what you find isn't just dust and decay. One of the friends, Mark, decided to check out the attic. He didn't come back for hours. The group called out for him, but there was no answer. When they finally mustered the courage to go up, they found something. Or rather, someone. A figure, standing perfectly still in the corner of the attic, facing the wall. Mark was in a daze. His eyes wide open, but not seeing anything. And then, a voice, soft and whispering, came from behind them. Saying, "You should have never come here, too." The shadow in the corner. Our next story is one that many of us can relate to, the feeling of being watched. But what happens when that feeling is no longer a feeling, but a terrifying reality? A Reddit user, let's call them Sarah, had been living alone in an apartment for months. Every night, she'd go to bed, but every time she'd wake up, she'd feel a cold presence. One night, as she awoke from a nightmare, she noticed a shadow in the corner of her room. A dark figure, unmoving, watching her. She tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was a trick of the light, or her mind playing tricks. But the shadow, it moved closer, inch by inch, until it was standing beside her bed. She could hear it breathing. But when she turned the light on, there was nothing. Just darkness, but Sarah wasn't alone for long. The next night, the shadow was back, and this time, it whispered her name, 3. The disappearing hitchhiker. This next encounter comes from someone who thought they could never be tricked by a simple roadside hitchhiker. But the road ahead was anything but simple. A Redditor was driving down a lonely stretch of highway late at night when they saw a figure standing on the side of the road. A hitchhiker. It was unusual, but not completely strange. This was a remote area, after all. They stopped, rolled down their window, and offered the man a ride. As soon as the man got in, he said nothing. Just sat there, staring straight ahead. They tried to make small talk, but he didn't respond. When they reached the next town, the driver glanced over. And the man was gone. No door opening, no sound of him leaving. Just, gone. Later, when the driver told the story, locals revealed a chilling truth. There had been no hitchhiker on that stretch of road for years. The one who disappeared was the very same man, killed in a crash exactly where he had been picked up. 4. The Whispering Walls. This next story might make you question the very walls of your home. Could they be hiding something more than just plaster and paint? A Redditor's family had just moved into a new house, old, but charming. Everything seemed fine until the first night they spent there. That's when they first heard it, soft whispers, coming from the walls. At first, they thought it was just the house settling. But over time, the whispers grew clearer. Sometimes they'd hear their names being called out, softly, gently, almost like a lullaby. But no one was ever there. One night, unable to take it any longer, they decided to investigate. When they removed a section of the wall, they found nothing. No hidden speakers, no wires. Just an empty void. But the whispers didn't stop. And now, they were starting to sound like warnings. 5. The creepy neighbor who never left. Have you ever had a neighbor who just seemed off? This Redditor's experience goes beyond just off. Their neighbor, a quiet elderly man, had always kept to himself. But one day, he stopped answering his door. The Redditor, concerned, went to check on him, knocking several times. There was no answer. But as they turned to leave, they heard the unmistakable sound of someone shuffling behind them. Spinning around, they saw the man standing in the doorway, staring at them with vacant eyes. But the worst part? He hadn't left his house in years. And it seemed impossible for him to move that quickly. They never saw him again, but they could hear the shuffling footsteps at night. 6. The mysterious disappearance of the campers. This next story takes us deep into the woods, where something much darker than nature lurks. 6 campers went into the forest for a weekend retreat. But on the second night, they encountered something that would change their lives forever. One by one, they began to disappear without a trace. First, it was just one camper, then another, until only 2 remained. When they went looking for their missing friends, they found nothing. Not even signs of struggle. It was as if they had vanished into thin air. They fled the woods that night, but they would never forget the sounds of footsteps trailing behind them in the dark, and the eerie feeling that something, or someone, was still watching. 7. The stranger who knows too much. Sometimes, the most unsettling encounters are the ones where a stranger knows more about you than they should. One Redditor was having a typical evening at home when they received a call. It was a number they didn't recognize. They answered, only to hear a voice on the other end saying, "I know where you are." The voice didn't introduce itself, didn't give any context, just spoke as if it had been watching them for a long time. They hung up, shaken. But the voice called back again, each time with more specific details about their daily life. They never heard from the stranger again, but the fear lingered, and they never could shake the feeling that they were being watched. 7 terrifying encounters. 7 stories that leave you with more questions than answers. Whether it's the supernatural, the inexplicable, or just the dark corners of our minds, these tales are the ones that keep us up at night. If you enjoyed these stories, be sure to like, subscribe, and share with your friends who can handle a little bit of terror. And remember, next time you're alone in the dark, you might want to listen closely, just in case you hear something that shouldn't be there.